You open your eyes to mist, not the dramatic kind, like in movies where dragons appear, or that fog that makes you think someone's hiding behind a tree with ill intentions. No, this mist is sleepy, soft, damp. It curls around your ankles like a lazy cat and smells faintly of salt, wood smoke, and something vaguely fermented. You're standing in a Viking village, somewhere along the Scandinavian coast, around the year 875. Give or take. Historians don't exactly agree which year qualifies as the real Viking peak, because time was a little slippery back then. Calendars weren't their strong suit. They were a bit more focused on boats, fish, and yelling. Your boots crunch on frost-hardened dirt as you walk down a narrow path between turf-roof houses. The sky is a low pewter above you. Every chimney leaks ribbons of pale smoke, and somewhere a cow sounds like it's dramatically reliving a past trauma. Welcome to the neighborhood. Here, daily life is a quiet grind of chopping wood, hauling water, feeding goats that look like they've seen things, and wondering why the porridge always tastes like boiled socks. But today, something's a little off. There's a strange stillness, like the village is holding its breath. A woman hunches outside her hut, clutching a carved wooden bowl. She stirs something thick and pale with a stick that might also double as a hairpin. The contents glisten like cold glue. You make the mistake of sniffing it. Yes, fish. Specifically, a concoction called lysinger, a paste made from boiled cod liver, mashed barley, and sour whey. A sick day delicacy. Apparently, it balances the humors. And if it doesn't, well, it clears out the room, which is almost the same thing. You might think Vikings lived off mead and mammoth haunches, but most days it was dried fish, soggy grains, in the hope of something vaguely edible. If you were ill, it got weirder. An old man, possibly a healer, possibly just a guy who collects interesting rocks, taps your shoulder with a carved bone spoon. You look peaky, he says. Boiled turnip skin and fermented herring might help. You thank him politely and move along. Behind you, the slow chant of women grinding grain on stone wheels blends with the lapping sea. A dog, if that's the word for something so patchy and enthusiastic, trots past you carrying half a rabbit. You decide not to ask. They say Vikings never feared death, but judging by the things they willingly ate, they might have just been too nauseous to care. Scholars still debate whether these pungent remedies were medicinal or just a punishment for complaining. You step into the longhouse. The warmth hits you like a gentle furnace. Inside, herbs dangle from beams, and someone's boiling onions and beer. Again, there's always a pot of something bubbling. Just outside the door, a child sneezes like it's an Olympic event. No one flinches. Sickness is part of the rhythm here. It comes and goes like the tide, or that one uncle who always brings bad mead to feasts. You probably won't make it through this day. But before you drift off entirely, go ahead and like this video if your eyelids are already a little heavier. Maybe subscribe. That way, the next time we whisper ancient smells into your dreams, you'll be ready. And if you're still awake, drop a comment with your location and local time. Are you in modern Oslo? Midnight in Kentucky? Let's connect across centuries. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. The fire crackles, your limbs relax, and we follow the fish-scented trail deeper into Viking sick days. You sit beside the hearth now, watching the flames twitch in lazy spirals. The longhouse is quieter than you expect. A few people lie curled in the shadows, bundled in wool and old fur, murmuring softly in their sleep or delirium. It's hard to tell which. Outside, the village healer is still puttering around with a basket of damp roots and a very confident look. She hums as she sorts her supplies: dried angelica root, crushed juniper berries, moss scraped from the north side of a rock. Because, obviously, south side moss is a joke. She dips a strip of wool into something thick and green. Then she wraps it around a man's wrist and nods like she's just cured the plague, which, to be fair, hasn't arrived yet. Give it a few centuries. One major historical fact the textbooks do agree on: Vikings use a lot of plants in their healing, both native ones like yarrow and imported ones like cumin. Yes, cumin. It made it north somehow, probably via trade routes, or someone's overly ambitious spice dream. You glance around and realize how communal illness is here. There's no privacy curtain, No gentle beeping machines. Just you, your cough, and 20 of your closest neighbors trying not to catch it. If one person sneezes, the rest just shrug and ladle more fish paste. It turns out that one obscure Viking practice was using cow dung poultices. Yes, really, mixed with herbs and applied to wounds. The theory? Heat and earth spirits. The result? Probably infection. But also, possibly comfort, if your standard were extremely low and your nose fully blocked. Someone near the door is muttering to a carved amulet. It's shaped like Thor's hammer, worn smooth from years of fingers rubbing it in hope or anxiety. The line between the two was thin back then. There's no aspirin, no antibiotics. Just warm broth, breath-clouded windows, and an endless supply of opinions from elders who knew a guy who cured a fever with pickled seal fat and a wolf's tooth. One man, gaunt and gray, says he saw a dream of the sea gods, long arms of foam reaching inland. Everyone nods, partly in respect, partly because if you dream during fever, it's basically prophetic, at least until proven otherwise. Outside, the wind starts up again. It whistles through the cracks in the walls and smells like pine and something slightly decomposing. Possibly fish again. Or hope. The healer returns, this time with a cup of something steaming and suspiciously blue. She hands it to you. Drink this, she says. It's made from blueberry wine and dried snail husks. You sip, because it's rude not to, and because your sense of smell has already surrendered. Historians still debate whether this healer was trained in traditional medicine or just incredibly confident. Either way, she gets results, mostly because no one argues with someone carrying a goat bladder full of hot herbs. You lean back, eyelids heavier now, and notice a carving on the ceiling, a ship etched in soot and finger scratches. It sails across the wooden beams like it's headed to a warmer place. You almost follow it. The fire murmurs. Someone coughs. Someone laughs. It's not a bad place to be sick, honestly. If you don't mind the smell, your breath slows. The fish paste simmers. And somewhere, a chicken sneezes. Let's not think too hard about that. The fire has gone low. Coals now glow with that soft, steady heat that seeps into your bones. You shift a little closer, your fingers warming beneath a woven blanket that may or may not have begun its life as part of the sail. It's hard to tell. Recycling is a timeless art. You're starting to feel a little better. Or maybe you're just too tired to notice how bad you feel. Either way, that blueberry snail concoction is doing something. Whether that something is medicinal or mildly hallucinogenic remains, well, historically unclear. Outside, morning peels itself over the village like a cold onion. Pale light filters through slits in the roof, illuminating tiny motes of dust and ash. They dance in the air like lazy snowflakes that miss their cue. Someone opens a longhouse door, and a fresh gust barges in, smelling of seaweed and wet wool. A woman stomps her boots by the entrance. She carries a bucket of something frothy and unidentifiable. Goat milk yogurt, she says, as if that explains everything. You nod politely and pretend not to breathe in. This, apparently, is breakfast. The Vikings believed in eating fermented things, often milk, cabbage, fish, bread. It kept them strong and balanced. Or at least too confused to notice how unbalanced they really felt. Plus, bacteria hadn't been invented yet. Or so they thought. You spoon the yogurt into your mouth. It's sour, creamy, and oddly warm, like someone whispered a sauna into a spoon. A nearby boy chews on dried kelp and stares at you, as if daring you to admit it tastes bad. You don't. You respect the kelp. A man with the kind of beard that could host small birds tells a tale about a fever cure from the far north. It involved sea eagle feathers and a sacred sweat lodge made from whale bones. Most people nod. One woman rolls her eyes, so hard it echoes. Obscure fact of the morning. Viking-age Norse people occasionally used powdered animal horn in their medicine. Yes, powdered horn. From cows, deer, even reindeer. Ground down, boiled, and applied to the afflicted. To do what exactly? That's less clear. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was calcium. Maybe it was boredom. You look around at the people bundled in cloaks and furs, sharing stale bread and sour broth with quiet camaraderie. It's intimate in a kind of bleak, fishy way. They don't separate the sick from the well here. Life's too short, or too cold, or both. You share space, food, germs, and probably dreams. This is a place where coughs echo like gossip, and everyone pretends not to hear. One child pipes up with a story about a ghost who cures illness by stealing your fever in exchange for a button. His grandmother says, "That's nonsense." Then she hands you a button, just in case. Scholars still debate whether Norse medical knowledge came more from local observation or ancient superstition. But when both lead you to boil garlic in beer and rub it on your feet, does it really matter? You finish your yogurt. You think about the concept of bacteria again. Then you decide not to. There's a rhythm to this day, slow and soft. Chores must be done, with chopped, animals fed, fish hung to dry. Even sick, the people here don't fully stop. They just slow down, like everything is done underwater, or with one eye closed. Someone hands you a piece of birch bark with something written on it, a healing charm. The runes are carved carefully, thoughtfully. You run your finger over them. They feel like mossy memories. Outside, the sun rises a bit higher. Not warm exactly, but present, and that's enough. You lie back down. Your limbs feel heavier. The fire cracks once, then settles again into its hush. In the background, someone hums a song. It's off-key and perfect. You think about feathers, powder horn, seaweed, and buttons. You think about ghosts who trade cures. And then you drift. Later, how much later? No one's quite sure. You wake to the rhythmic thump of something being pounded outside. Not a war drum, thankfully. Just someone mashing root vegetables with a very aggressive stick. You stretch. The longhouse is emptied a bit. Some of the sick have shuffled off to feel better elsewhere. Others have simply accepted their fate, curled up in corners like sleepy badgers. You step outside. The sky is trying its best to be blue. It's a pale, apologetic sort of blue, like it regrets yesterday's gloom but won't fully commit to cheerfulness. You relate. Out in the square, a woman in thick braids is making a mash of rutabaga and smoked eel. "For strength," she says, stabbing the mixture with a wooden spoon. You believe her, not because it sounds good, but because she says it with the intensity of someone who has never questioned rutabaga. Food here is medicine, and sometimes punishment. Fun cultural tidbit. Vikings believed strongly in the medicinal power of broth, especially bone broth made from lamb or fish. The richer the smell, the more curative, which may explain why the air around you now smells like a shoe that's been soaked in seaweed tea and hope. A girl offers you a sip from a goatskin pouch. Inside is Njadr tea metasweet, one of their go-to plants for fevers and pain. It tastes like dandelions arguing with grass. But your headache recedes slightly, or at least becomes less interested in being dramatic. You walk down toward the shore, where boats creak lazily in their moorings. Nets dry in the sun. A man is rubbing fish oil onto his chest and humming. You don't ask. Somewhere nearby, a heated rock is being dropped into a clay pot to make steam for an improvised sweat lodge. Sweat out, they say, nodding wisely, then eat something salty. Advice that somehow still exists on TikTok. One man is having his chest painted with protective runes. They're careful not to smudge it. Apparently, it wards off the damp spirits. Whether those are literal ghosts or just winter colds is, well, historians still argue about that. You sit on a smooth rock, breathing in the salt and firewood and fermented courage of it all. A fish jumps nearby, possibly in protest. Here, illness isn't something to be feared. It's something to be endured, sung about, wrapped in wool and massaged with bare fat. There's no isolation, no shame, just a community muddling through together. Someone sneezes behind you, then says, "Blessings of Thor." You nod gravely, as if you're part of the ritual. Another round of fermented turnip soup is passed around. You sip it carefully. It's tangy, odd, but strangely warming. You realize you're not entirely better, but you're not entirely worse. And sometimes, in Viking times, that's considered an overwhelming success. The wind shifts. You feel it in your chest. The hum of a world that heals not through perfection, but persistence. You lean back on the rock. The village, the sea, the fire, all of it blurs together. You close your eyes. The pounding of rutabaga continues somewhere behind you, comfortingly relentless. And that's enough for now. You wake slowly to the soft brushing of linen against wood. Someone nearby is weaving. The gentle clack of the loom is like a heartbeat for the longhouse, steady, necessary, and slightly hypnotic. It's almost enough to make you forget you're recovering from a bout of medieval stomach something. Almost. You sit up. Your blanket has slid halfway off. A small child is curled up near your feet, drooling happily into a ragged fur cloak. No one seems concerned. Personal space is more of a suggestion here. A few others are already up, sipping from bowls of something that looks like porridge and smells like regret. You're offered a serving, and of course you accept, because you're polite, and also because turning down food in this village is like cursing someone's livestock. It's called grouch. A grain porridge made from barley and oats, thin with sour milk and topped, if you're lucky, with a knob of animal fat. The texture lands somewhere between gritty paste and slightly ambitious cement, but it's warm. And right now, that's a kind of medicine. The Viking idea of nutrition is refreshingly simple. Eat what grows, what swims, or what bleats. Bonus points if it ferments. Today's historical fact. Sick or not, most Norse households ate two main meals, morning and evening, both heavy on grains, broth, and fish. The concept of lunch hadn't quite evolved yet, probably because stopping to eat 3 times a day would cut into important activities like boat building, axe sharpening, and surviving. Nearby, a woman is feeding crushed garlic to a goose. You do not ask why. She looks focused, and you don't want to become part of the experiment. An older man, with a beard long enough to braid into a small curtain, pulls out a pouch of dried herbs. He offers you a sniff. It's sage, thyme, and something that might be crushed lichen. For clearing the lungs, he says, or flavoring stew. Hard to remember which. You pretend to know the difference. Obscure tidbit of the morning. Some Vikings brewed beer with bog myrtle instead of hops. Not for flavor, but because they believed it had healing properties. It didn't. But it did make the beer taste like forest floor and dreams of dirt. You make your way outside. The air is sharper now. Frost crackles beneath your boots. Across the village, a woman is combing a sheep with surprising aggression. It's a shearing day, apparently. Or maybe just an argument between old friends. You're waved over to help stir a pot. Inside, cabbage leeks dried herring and leftover bits from yesterday's eel mash breakfast. It's called ill stew, not because it causes illness, but because it's what you feed the sick. Though honestly, the difference feels academic. A man behind you mutters something about spirits in the north wind. He spits into the fire, then nods solemnly. You do the same. Not because you believe, but because he's holding a large axe and the fire looks thirsty. Scholars still debate whether Norse healing rituals were symbolic acts of spiritual alignment or just socially approved ways of doing something. Anything. When someone looked unwell, you finish your porridge. You cough less than yesterday. Your limbs ache a little less. Progress, in Viking terms. The weaving continues in the background. That clack-clack, a lullaby for the bored and the ill. You lean back, belly full of barley and mild suspicion, and stare up at the gray sky. It doesn't promise much, but it doesn't threaten either. And for today, that's enough. The wind shifts, and with it, the rhythm of the village. You hear the faint call of gulls over the distant waves, and the crackle of someone lighting a new fire from the old one. Embers don't go to waste here. Everything is reused, even the heat. You step toward the shore again where the air feels cleaner, if sharper. The sea is the same pewter color as the sky, blurred at the edges like a dream you can't quite remember. A few boats are out, just silhouettes, swaying in rhythm with the tide, nets trailing like long sea tongues behind them. You walk along the sand, which crunches beneath your boots, half frozen, half slushy, wholly uninterested in being welcoming. Still, it feels good to move, even with the lingering wobble in your step. As you round the rocks, you come across a man kneeling by a barrel. He's stirring something thick and shiny with a stick that looks older than most trees. You pause. He looks up. Cod liver oil, he says, grinning with teeth that tell stories. You gnawed, though you wish you hadn't. The smell hit seconds later, a slap of ocean rot and vitamins. Apparently, this brew is kept for emergencies, winter strength, and children who refuse to behave. Cod liver oil was prized in Viking times, rich in nutrients before anyone knew what nutrients were. They just knew it made your joints stop squeaking and your eyes stop being weird. Probably. There are runes about it. Obscure note. Some healers claim that mixing fish oil with snow and rubbing it into sore muscles could scare the cold away. Whether this scared the cold or just startled the patient remains unresolved. The man gestures for you to try some. You decline with a smile that is as gentle as it is terrified. You walk back up toward the village, feeling vaguely victorious for not vomiting. A woman is spreading dried seaweed on flat stones. It's for bandages, she says. Draws out the bad heat. She might mean infection. She might mean curses. Or maybe she just likes seaweed. Nearby, someone's boiling bark in a blackened pot. Maybe used to soothe sore throats or possibly polish tools. Sometimes both. You don't ask for clarification. You're handed a tiny leather pouch. Inside, dried mint, crushed wild thyme, and a bit of beeswax. A healing balm. You rub some on your temples. It tingles like polite fire. You like it. Today's historical fact. Vikings weren't just warriors. They were practical caretakers. Every village had people, often women, who knew how to treat wounds, illnesses, and that vague category called the heaviness, which may have been depression, or just an accurate description of being alive in the 9th century. Scholars still debate whether Viking healers relied more on inherited knowledge or trial-and-error rituals passed through generations with the confidence of people who'd never seen a microscope. You settle beside the fire again. Someone singing low, tuneless, but soothing. A saga about a warrior who got better by bathing in milk and punching a bear. You suspect some poetic license. The heat wraps around you. Your breath slows. Someone sneezes. Someone blesses them in 3 gods' names. Just to be safe. You close your eyes, hands warm, belly quiet. And somewhere out there, a barrel of cod liver oil waits for its next victim. By now, the village feels smaller. Not because it's changed, but because you've begun to learn its patterns. The way footsteps crunch on frozen ground. The way doors creak open like they're signed from the effort. The way voices drift lazily through the air like they have nowhere urgent to go. You're standing at the edge of the settlement again, watching 2 figures haul something heavy through the snow. A third follows behind, carrying a bundle of long sticks and muttering under his breath. As they pass, you catch the scent. Salt, wood smoke, and vinegar? Curious. You follow. They're constructing a sweat hut. Not the polite kind you find at a spa, with towels and soft lighting, but squat, stone-ring structure half covered in damp furs. Steam curls from a pit in the center, where rocks glow orange and angry. Someone ladles water onto them, and the hiss is immediate, like a warning. A man with cheeks like ruddy apples turns to you. You look damp on the inside, he says cheerfully. Time to sweat out the ghosts. You suppose he's not entirely wrong. This was a real Viking practice. Improvised sweat lodges, especially for those recovering from illness or plagued by unseen spirits. A cleansing ritual, half practical, half spiritual, fully uncomfortable. You're handed a mug of weak juniper tea. Men open the lungs and distract you from the fact that you are, essentially, willingly crawling into a steaming animal-scented sauna beside 3 strangers and a pile of rocks that smell like fire and regret. Inside, it's dark. The air thickens with each breath. Sweat beads on your skin almost immediately. Your lungs labor a little harder, and someone begins chanting softly in Old Norse. You don't understand the words, but you get the meaning. Let this pass. Let it sweat away. The man next to you sprinkles a mix of herbs on the stones. Angelica, birch leaves, something vaguely peppery, and the scent blooms through the space like hot tea in a closed room. Obscure fact for the night. Vikings use Angelica root for everything from stomach cramps to plague prevention. It was their go-to magic plant, even mentioned in Icelandic law as a protected resource. Basically, Angelica was a Viking version of coconut oil. Rub it on, eat it, pray to it. Minutes pass. Or hours. Time dissolves in the heat. You hear your own breathing echo. A drop of sweat slips down your spine like a disapproving relative. And then someone begins humming, deep, low, and rhythmic. It's not a song so much as a vibration. The experience isn't pleasant, exactly, but it is transformative. Eventually, someone claps their hands twice. The steam bath is over. You crawl out blinking, lungs clearer, skin prickled, the cold air biting into you like a friendly wolf. You're handed a dry cloth and a bowl of cold water. You sip it like it's the finest meat in all of Jutland. Today's historical fact. While many people picture Vikings as brutish, they were actually rather obsessed with hygiene for their era. Combs, tweezers, even ear picks have been found in burial sites. Weekly steam baths were not uncommon. Probably make up for all the fish guts and open wounds. Scholars still debate whether the spiritual side of sweat lodges came first, or if they just invented it to make sitting naked in steam sound nobler. You sit on a log to cool down. Your muscles hum. Your thoughts drift. And for the first time since you arrived here, you feel light. Maybe the ghosts really did sweat out. Or maybe you're just very, very clean. Back at the longhouse, the evening hush begins to settle in again. It's not silent, exactly, but the noise softens. Voices become murmurs. Footsteps become padding, and the fire's crackle grows louder in the quiet. You return to the hearth, freshly bundled in a thick wool tunic someone handed you without asking your name. That's how things work here. Ownership is flexible. Warmth is shared. There's a pot bubbling again, of course. This time, the broth smells vaguely like leek, sea salt, and something sharp, vinegar or fermented garlic. Maybe a sign that someone has a cough. You ease down beside it, stretching legs that feel like softened birch wood. Across from you, a woman peels bark into fine strips. She adds them into a pouch of dried leaves. Birch cures sore joints, she explains, or at least keeps them too distracted to complain. She hands you a small bundle, wrapped in fish skin, because why not? Inside, dried herbs, moss, and a twist of string. For protection, she adds, from colds or neighbors. You tuck it into your belt because it's rude not to, and also because it smells faintly of mint and mystery. Nearby, a man is using a carved bone needle to sew together two pieces of leather. He's not speaking, just humming. Something deep and low that vibrates in your chest like a drumbeat under a woolen blanket. Today's obscure but true fact. Some Viking healers believed diseases had to be tricked or outwitted. One recorded cure involved offering food to the illness, literally placing bits of fish on a threshold to tempt a fever spirit away from the sick person. In fairness, it probably worked on dogs, too. The evening meal is passed around. More stew, this time thickened with crushed grain and sweetened slightly with dried apples. Apples, a luxury, stored carefully in root cellars, wrapped in straw and hope. You chew slowly, savoring. Every bite tastes like effort. Someone grew it, gathered it, preserved it, stirred it, shared it. It's not gourmet, but it's human. Historical fact of the evening. Norse people stored a surprising range of food through their winters. Root vegetables, dried fruits, cured meats, sour milk products, even dried seaweed. They weren't surviving. They were planning. Scholars still debate whether Viking culinary methods were developed out of need or ingenuity. But considering you're eating pickled cabbage next to a fire wrapped in sheepskin, you're leaning toward both. A child offers you a carved toy, some kind of deer or maybe an angry dog. It's hard to tell, but it's smooth and warm in your hand. The fire hisses again. Outside, a storm begins to roll in. Wind rattling the turf roofs, snow brushing across the shutters. Inside, it's warm. Someone snores softly. Someone coughs into their sleeve. Someone else sings a lullaby with only 2 notes, repeated endlessly like waves. You settle deeper into the fur pile beside you. Your bones are tired in that good way, like they've been used well. And somewhere in the distance, through the storm, you hear a goat bleat. Even in this quiet, someone always needs something. But not you. Not now. Not tonight. You wake in the middle of the night, though wake might be too strong a word. It's more like your eyes drift open without your permission. The fire has dimmed into a red whisper. Shadows breathing slowly on the walls like they're dreaming, too. The longhouse is still. Someone turns in their sleep. Someone else mumbles what might be a prayer or a comment on the stew. Hard to say. You pull the fur tighter around your shoulders. It's cold now, not in a cruel way, but in a reminder sort of way. The kind of cold that says, you're still alive. Congratulations. Outside, snow taps gently against the roof. You hear it in slow waves, like soft footsteps pacing back and forth. You imagine the gods listening in. Or maybe it's just a bored chicken perched in the rafters again. One never really knows. You sit up for a moment. Your head no longer spins. Your stomach is mostly neutral. This is Viking wellness. Not leaping with energy, just not dying. And sometimes that's as good as it gets. A few embers glow. A small pot simmers over them, left to warm gently through the night. Inside is laukervaten or onion water, a Viking cold remedy. Slices of onion boiled in water with a hint of salt and sometimes a sprinkle of herbs. It's said to pull out the wetness. Whether that means congestion or existential dread, no one clarifies. You sip some. It tastes like watery honesty. Not good, but not bad. Comforting in the way a damp cloth on your forehead might be. Obscure tidbit of the night. Vikings believed that certain dreams had healing power. If you dreamt of standing on a mountain with a glowing axe, it meant you'd recover soon. If you dreamt of fish swimming upstream, well, that probably meant you'd eaten too much fish. Someone shifts and mutters, "No more goat yogurt," in a sleepy groan. You lie back down, the onion water warming your belly like a soft internal candle. Your eyes close again, but the sounds stay with you. The hiss of embers, the sigh of sleeping bodies, the creak of wood as it settles back into its own bones. Historical fact. Even in these so-called dark ages, Norse homes were built with insulation in mind. Turf-covered roofs and overlapping with planks helped trap heat. Primitive, sure, but effective. Comfort mattered, especially when you were too tired to complain. Scholars still debate whether dreams were truly believed to cure illness, or if it was simply a way to comfort the sick with something they could still control, their imagination. You dream of something now, though it's vague. A ship made of pine needles, sailing across a sea of broth. A goat plays a flute on the shore. And just like that, you're asleep again, wrapped in fish skin, wool, and silence. Morning arrives with an unceremonious grunt from someone near the fire. It's not a rooster's crow or a poetic beam of sunlight. It's just the reality of someone older than the mountains trying to stand up without swearing. You smile barely and sit up. The stew pot's been replenished, now bubbling with a richer aroma. Maybe lentils, maybe dried peas, maybe just yesterday's leftovers with a new name. You're handed a bowl before you can even say good morning. That's how mornings work here. There's no small talk before porridge. Today, someone has added ramslock, wild garlic, to the mix. Strong, pungent, and likely to chase off both colds and close friendships. You sip anyway. It's oddly invigorating, like being slapped politely by flavor. Outside, the storm has left its trace. A thin coat of snow blankets the village, glittering in the half-hearted winter sun. People are already moving, gathering firewood, checking on animals, muttering about ice like it personally insulted them. You walk past a line of fish hanging to dry. They stare at you with empty eyes, and you stare back, equally unenthusiastic. Then you notice something odd, a small, soot-stained cloth tied to a tree branch. It flaps gently in the breeze. A boy nearby sees you looking. It's for the wind spirits, he explains. So they don't come in the house and whisper fever. You nod slowly, as if this makes complete sense. And maybe it does. After all, if you live in a world where a cold could take you down for weeks, you'd try every charm, chant, and sacred rag, too. Obscure cultural practice. Viking households often place carved wooden figures or bone charms near doorways to ward off sickness. These might represent gods, ancestors, or just abstract shapes of protection. Did it work? Hard to say. But it certainly gave people something to focus on besides their symptoms. You walk to the edge of the village again, where an elder is boiling resin over a low fire. She stirs it with a stick carved with runes. "Chest salve," she says. made with pine, lard, and a bit of soot. You blink. Soot. She shrugs. Everything has a purpose, even the burned bits. She offers some for your chest. You don't protest. The pace is warm, smells like a pine tree that's been through some emotional turmoil, and spreads like warm wax. Your cough vanishes, or maybe retreats out of confusion. Today's historical fact. Vikings made use of animal fats, tree sap, and ashes in creating ointments and balms, not just for wounds, but for general health. Some mixtures were rubbed on the chest, others around the nostrils. The results were mixed. Scholars still debate whether these practices had genuine anti-inflammatory effects, or if people just felt better after being smothered in pig grease and pine tar. Either way, you feel better. You sit on a log, watching a crow strut around like it owns a village. It probably does. A woman brings you a piece of flatbread topped with dried herbs and a thin smear of goat cheese. It's surprisingly pleasant. You eat slowly, grateful, not for the flavor, exactly, but for the quiet, the rhythm, the care. In this little world of fishy broths and smoky skies, healing doesn't happen all at once. It seeps in slowly, like warmth through stone. You feel it now. Not perfect, not new, but better. And that's more than enough. It's late morning now, the kind of time when the sun finally gives up pretending it will rise higher and simply hovers behind clouds like an indecisive guest. Everything is silver and slow. Even the snow melts in a lazy trickle-down thatched roofs. You've grown used to the pace of things here. No rush, no schedules, just the gentle persistence of life moving forward. Even when people are coughing the corner and sipping something pungent from wooden bowls. Today, there's excitement in the village, by which, of course, we mean mild interest. Someone's found wild honey. You're brought to the center of it all, a squat, laughing woman holding a beeswax-stained jar and telling everyone about the near-death experience that was retrieving it. The bees were polite but firm, she says, then laughs like she's still vibrating from the chase. Honey isn't just a sweetener here. It's medicine, miracle, and myth. They mix it with herbs, smear it on wounds, drop it into tea, and, if they're feeling lucky, just eat it straight off the knife. You're handed a bit of barley bread with honey spread thinly across the top. It tastes like sunshine and apology. And for a moment, the fishy breath of this winter village lifts. Obscure practice of the day. Some Viking folk believe that honey could cure melancholy if placed beneath the tongue during a full moon. There are no full moons today, but you consider holding a second bite under your tongue anyway, just in case. Over by the fire pit, a man is boiling water with cloves and dried citrus peels, imported, smuggled, or simply imagined. He calls it healing wine. There's no actual wine in it, just a hopeful name and a mildly intoxicating scent. You sip. It's sweet and spicy, like someone tried to make mulled cider out of tree bark in confidence. Not bad. Today's historical fact. Vikings, especially those who traded widely, were no strangers to imported ingredients. Through contact with the East and Southern Europe, they acquired spices like cinnamon, ginger, and even black pepper, though only the wealthy or lucky ever tasted them. You watch as the children chase a chicken in circles. Not for fun. It's part of a ritual to chase away the bad sleep. The chicken looks more inconvenient than sacred, but traditions are traditions. A group of women gather herbs and pine needles into bundles, then toss them onto the fire. The smoke turns sharp and aromatic. One woman waves the smoke over her chest, then over her sleeping husband. You do the same. Scholars still debate whether this kind of smoke healing was based on germ theory before germ theory existed, or if it was just a pleasant excuse to burn plants indoors. You breathe in deeply. The smoke smells like bitter tea and wet forest. You feel lighter somehow, or maybe just woozy. Later, a man shows you his medicine pouch. Bone beads, a raven feather, 3 pebbles, and a twist of thread. Good for the lungs, he says, tapping his chest. You nod solemnly. You believe him, not because it makes sense, but because it clearly means something to him. And sometimes belief is its own kind of medicine. You return to your spot by the fire, honey still on your tongue, smoke still in your hair. You lean back against the wood, full of warmth and sweetness. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs less than yesterday, and that, in Viking terms, is a miracle. It's snowing again, lazy, fat flakes that don't seem to care where they land. They drift through the air like tiny old men looking for their misplaced mittens. You stand outside for a moment, letting the snow catch on your eyelashes, and for once, it doesn't feel cold, just quiet. The village is still, but not idle. Someone's chopping wood near the edge of the forest. Someone else is feeding the fire beneath a large iron cauldron, where someone with beans or maybe lentils is simmering in a slow boil. Today's medicine is a Brennivan broth, a thin soup made from barley, garlic, and just a dash of the local strong liquor. It burns the bad out, they say. You suspect it also burns out memory, appetite, and possibly the lining of the mouth. You sip it anyway. It's shockingly warm. Your throat goes from sore to surprise in seconds. You're taken to help gather lichen, yes, lichen, from the rocks outside the village. The healer says it's good for chest pain, if you don't mind a little bitterness. You don't mind. After fish liver paste, bitterness feels like a polite acquaintance. Obscure healing tidbit. Some Norse texts mention soaking moss or lichen in goat milk to make a poultice for bruises. Others describe it being eaten, but only by those desperate enough to ignore flavor entirely. You return, hands red from the cold, with a pouch full of greenish fluff that smells like damp wood. The healer thanks you and adds it to a mixture bubbling in a seal pot. She won't tell you what's in it. It's better if you don't know, she says, and smiles like a raven that's just eaten something it shouldn't have. Inside the longhouse, someone's making tea with dried berries and birch bark. Another person is carving a spoon from bone. Everything has a purpose here. Even leisure is a kind of work. Today's historical fact. While much of Viking medicine was herbal, bones and carved talismans played a role, too. These weren't just charms, but practical tools, spoons, needles, even splints. The line between magical and medical was as thin as the bark on a winter tree. You sit by the fire again, sipping the berry tea. It's sour, sharp, and honest. A young girl tells you she once saw a sickness leave her brother in the form of shadow. It slipped out during sleep and scuttled under the door. We blocked the door with straw after that. She says, very seriously, you believe her. Maybe not with your logic, but with your heart, because this world runs not only on what works, but on what's been whispered for generations. Healing isn't just herbs and heat. It's stories, silence, and the belief that tomorrow might be better, even if just by a breath. You lie back again. Snow tickles the window ledges. The fire sighs. Your skin smells faintly of lichen and garlic and stories. You close your eyes and rest. The sky is darker than usual when you open your eyes, more charcoal than silver. It's not quite night, but not convincingly day either. One of those ambiguous Viking afternoons where the sun seems embarrassed to be seen. Inside the longhouse, the hearth glows with a steady, orange confidence. The stew pot has been replaced with something that looks suspiciously like boiled roots and smells faintly of wet rope. A good sign, apparently. Someone hands you a carved cup with steam rising from it. It's nettles and broth. For the blood, they say with a nod. You drink because you have learned that refusal is futile, and also because you're starting to genuinely like tasting things that confuse your mouth. Nettle tea, fun fact, was used by Viking healers to treat everything from joint pain to stomach upset. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it made you itch. Sometimes both. You cough once, just once. Everyone looks. A woman leans in and hands you a strip of waxcloth. Wrap this around your middle, she whispers, and don't speak of the wind. You don't know if the cloth helps, but you're definitely not going to talk trash about the breeze now. Outside, the snow has stopped. You walk carefully through the village, boots crunching over crusted frost, head wrapped in fur that smells like smoked meat and dignity. You've grown used to this scent, a constant companion on your road to slightly less ill. You spot the healer at the edge of the tree line. She's bending over a low bush, snipping something with a knife that looks older than most family trees. You join her. She hands you a sprig of green, pine maybe, or some local cousin. For steam, she says. Back at the longhouse, she adds the greens to a basin of boiling water and gestures for you to lean in. Inhale like you mean it. You do. And it's a punch of scent, sharp, clean, bracing. Your sinuses open like startled doors. Your eyes water. You feel, briefly, like you become a forest. Obscure Viking tidbit. Steam inhalation wasn't just for illness. It was also part of morning rituals, spiritual cleansing, and even some pre-battle preparations. The logic? Breathe deep. Clear the bad. Then do what must be done. You sit back down by the fire, face flushed, chest open like a thawed window. You feel, dare you say it, functional. Today's historical fact. Norse healers often recorded remedies in poems. Short verses passed orally from one generation to the next. They were easier to remember than long instructions, and more entertaining to chant in the dark. Scholars still debate whether these healing rhymes were accurate medicine or just rhyming placebo. Either way, they worked, if not on the illness, then on the soul. You sip nettle broth, steam curling from your shoulders, breath steady and deep. You listen to someone reciting a story about a man who cured a cough by eating a crow's feather baked into bread. Everyone nods like it's perfectly reasonable. No one questions the logistics. And honestly, you don't either. You're too warm, too calm, too wrapped in the comfortable absurdity of a world where illness is just another guest to outlast. You lean back. The longhouse hums around you. The snow outside is quiet. And you begin to feel whole again. Not new, but whole. You wake to laughter. It's not loud, not jarring. Just a gentle ripple of amusement shared between two elders sitting near the fire, stirring something thick and brown in a stone bowl. You blink, confused. It smells sweet. You sit up. One of them notices. "Ah, you're awake," she says, just in time for the treat. This feels suspicious. She hands you a small wooden spoon. Inside, a mixture of crushed oats, dried berries, and animal fat, sweetened with a rare drizzle of honey. Viking comfort food. The texture is somewhere between cookie dough and candle wax, but it melts on your tongue in the nicest way. It's called smorgrout, a nourishing paste given to children, the weak, or the stubbornly recovering. Congratulations. You qualify. Outside, a man with wind-burned cheeks plays a bone flute. The sound is oddly soothing. Melancholy, yes, but in a way that makes you want to wrap yourself in a blanket and stare at the wall, pondering your place in the cosmos. You step outside again. The wind is less cruel today. A thaw is creeping in. Tiny icicles drip from the eaves like they're too tired to hold on. You find yourself standing near the goat pen, where a boy is attempting to feed a particularly stubborn goat a handful of dried herbs. It helps with bloating, he explains, as though this goat is a regular Viking apothecary. The goat headbutts the wall. Fair enough. Nearby, the healer is preparing something new, a poultice of crushed mustard seeds and hot ash. For deep aches, she says, and poor attitudes. She winks. You suspect she's not joking. Obscure tradition of the day, mustard poultices were used for centuries in Northern Europe, not just by Vikings, to relieve sore muscles, chest congestion, and occasionally settle a feud. You help grind the seeds with a stone, watching them break apart like tiny secrets. The ash comes from birch logs burned the night before. Everything is repurposed, nothing wasted. Today's historical fact. Viking households often had dedicated areas for medicine making, usually near the fire, with shelves for dried herbs, carved tools, and sometimes animal skulls believed to protect the healing space. A combination pharmacy, shrine, and kitchen counter. Scholars still debate how much of Viking medicine was scientific observation versus inherited ritual. But when both require boiling roots and whispering to goats, does it even matter? You rub the poultice into your arms. It stings, then warms. Your muscles stop complaining. Or at least, they become too confused to continue. You eat another spoonful of smorgrout. This one tastes even better. Or maybe you're just learning to love food that looks like it shouldn't exist. Someone begins singing a lullaby, a soft one, with long vowels and no real melody. It's the kind of song designed to end without anyone noticing. You lie down again, one hand resting on your chest, where the heat of the poultice still lingers. You close your eyes. You don't feel sick anymore. You don't feel anything urgent. And that in this quiet world of steam, snow, and slow healing, is peace. There's a different kind of stillness in the air this evening. Not the hush of illness or the silence of snow, but the kind that settles when something has ended. Not dramatically, not loudly, just faded. You sit outside the longhouse now, watching the sun drop behind the trees in slow motion. It doesn't so much set as it slinks away, like a cat leaving the room after knocking over a cup. You're no longer wrapped in extra layers, though a fur still rests lightly on your shoulders. You don't need it for warmth now, just comfort. That quiet armor people wear when they're almost healed, but not quite ready to rejoin the world. Someone brings you a bowl. Not stew, not broth, but a sort of fermented grain drink. Cold, sour, and gently fizzy, like a Viking's idea of soda. You sip it slowly, curious and strangely fond of its barnyard sparkle. Tonight's obscure cultural tidbit. Viking people believe that fermented drinks could reawaken the blood after illness, not because of alcohol, but because of the bubbles. Apparently, effervescence was magical. And honestly, who are we to argue with that logic? The village carries on in a low hum. Someone singing while mending a net. A dog trots past with something that looks suspiciously like a mitten in its mouth. The healer walks by and tosses a dried sprig of meadowsweet into the fire, just for the scent. It smells faintly like almond and forest dreams. You stretch. No ache. Not even a whisper fever. You feel capable, solid, like a person again, not just a damp cough wrapped in wool. Today's historical fact. Norse recovery wasn't just about surviving illness. It was about returning to strength to work, to one's place in the community. If you weren't contributing, you weren't whole. But there was no rush. Healing was a process, and the village respected that. Scholars still debate whether Viking recuperation practices were rooted in practicality, spirituality, or just good old-fashioned community stubbornness. The answer is probably yes to all three. A child plops beside you and hands you a rock with a faint spiral carved into it. It's for luck, they say. You ask why, and they shrug. Because the goat said so. You accept this. You turn the rock in your hand. And for a second, everything feels exactly as it should, grounded, calm, and just slightly ridiculous. You glance toward the woods, where fog is beginning to curl between the trees. You know you'll leave this village eventually. Step out of this fish-scented dreamscape and return to wherever you came from. But not just yet. For now you're here, with warm tea and warm hands, and no more strange potions to swallow. That, in Viking terms, is a successful recovery. So now let your breath ease. Feel the weight of the day melt from your shoulders like snow sliding off a slanted roof. Let the air grow softer, deeper, slower, like the way soup simmers after the fire is quieted. Picture that longhouse again, gentle and flickering. The fire low, casting sleepy shadows on fur-lined walls. The embers glow steady, like stars fall on the floor, warm and watchful. Outside, the night grows thick with quiet, the kind of quiet that holds its breath and listens. Your body is no longer tired from illness. It's heavy with rest, the satisfying sort that only comes after you've been mended by herbs, honey, strange fish treatments, and kindness you didn't ask for but were given anyway. A bowl rests nearby. Empty now, but your belly remembers the warmth, the steam, the spice of old leaves and laughter. The healer sleeps in her corner, still smelling faintly of soot and pine. Someone snores like a distant drum. And outside, the snow begins again, soft, aimless, a whisper drifting down from sky that holds nothing but peace. You are not cold. You are not coughing. You are not alone. In this quiet place of nettles and nap-time fish paste, you have been cared for, not perfectly, not cleanly, but completely. And that is enough. So close your eyes now. Let your breath match the rhythm of the fire. Let your body settle into the soft ground beneath it. And let yourself drift slowly, deeply into sleep. You've earned it. Good night, traveler.